Hello educators, my name is Tutu Masudubele and the purpose of this presentation is to mediate the ATP for mathematics grade 8 and 9, particularly in the fourth term. The presentation outline is as follows. We'll be going over the concepts and skills taught in the fourth term, the program of assessment, the assessment frameworks, and the revision material. Concepts and skills that are taught in the fourth term in grade 8. We have three topics. The first topic there is graphs. Second topic is theorem of Pythagoras. And the third topic is area and perimeter of 2D shapes. Now when we look at the time that has been allocated for graphs, that's 2 weeks. The time allocated for the theorem of Pythagoras, that's 2 weeks. And the time allocated for area and perimeter of 2D shapes, that's also 2 weeks. Now provision has been made for revision in the last week. Now it says here revision of term 3 and term 4 work. Now we'd advise educators to revise not only term 3 and term 4, but to also include term 1 and term 2. Now as per the ATP, the only assessment that will be administered in the fourth term will be the final examination that will consist of paper 1 and paper 2. Now when we look at the concepts and skills that are taught in grade 9 in the fourth term, we have three topics. The first topic being transformation geometry that has been allocated for 2 weeks. We have area and perimeter of 2D shapes that has been allocated for 2 weeks as well, and surface area and volume of 3D objects which has been allocated for 2 weeks. Now there's also provision for revision, and that should be for term 1 right up until the last term concepts and skills. Now just like in grade 8, the only assessment that will be administered in the fourth term will be the final examination, which will consist of paper 1 and paper 2. We now look at the program of assessment in 2023 for both grade 8 and 9. In the first term, we have 2 assessment tasks. That's your assignment and your test. In the second term, we have 2 assessment tasks for both grade 8 and 9. That's your investigation and your June test. In the third term, 2 assessment tasks for both grade 8 and 9. We have the project and the test. And in the fourth term, very important for us to note, educators, we only have the administration of the final examination. Now the final examination for grade 8 will comprise of 2 papers. The first paper will be allocated 60 marks. The second paper will be allocated 60 marks as well. Now, in terms of the weighting, the final examination will carry a weight of 40%, an overall weight of 40% in grade 8. And the SBA, meaning all the tasks that were administered from term 1 to the third, those will be weighted at 60%. Now, when you come to grade 9, the final examination will comprise of 2 papers as well. Paper 1 allocated at 75 marks, paper 2 allocated at 75 marks, and just like in grade 8, the final examination will be weighted at 40% in terms of the overall weight of the report mark, and your SBA will be weighted at 60%, meaning all the tasks that were administered from the first to the third term. All of those will be weighted at 60%, and the final examination at 40%. We now look at the final examination assessment dates. In grade 8, the first paper will be written on the 17th of November. The mark allocation is 60 marks, and the duration is at 1.5 hours. The second paper for grade 8 will be written on the 20th of November, 2023. Mark allocation is at 60, duration is 1.5 hours. Now in grade 9, the first paper will be written on the 16th of November. Mark allocation is 75 marks and the duration is 1.5 hours. Paper 2 for grade 9 will be written on the 22nd of November. Mark allocation is at 75 marks and the duration is at 1.5 hours. We now look at the grade 8 November assessment framework for paper 1. Remember the duration is 1.5 hours and the mark allocation is 60. Now we have 3 columns here. The first column will indicate the topics that will be assessed. The second column indicates the concepts that will be assessed under a particular topic. The third column indicates the number of marks that have been allocated for that particular topic. And the last column indicates the percentage in which that topic will take in that particular paper. Now the first topic there is whole numbers and integers, allocated at around 7 marks. Integers allocated at around 6 marks. Common fractions allocated at around 6 marks. Decimal fractions around 4 marks. Exponents around 6 marks. Functions and relationships around 5 marks. Numeric and geometric patterns around 6 marks. Algebraic expressions around 10 marks. Algebraic equations around 5 marks, and graphs around 5 marks. Now when you look at the mark allocation per topic, you will notice that algebraic expressions have been allocated more marks than the other topics there. Now the assessment framework for paper 2 for grade 8 will be as follows. 4 topics will be assessed, and that's the mark allocation. Now the first topic is the geometry of 2D shapes, allocated at 18 marks. The geometry of straight lines, allocated at 14 marks. The theorem of Pythagoras, allocated at 14 marks. Area and perimeter, allocated at 14 marks. Now if you notice, colleagues, that the geometry of 2D shapes has been allocated 4 more marks than the other 3 topics there. We now look at the November grade 9 assessment framework for paper 1. The duration is 1.5 hours and the total mark allocation is at 75 marks. Whole numbers have been allocated at around 10 marks. Integers allocated at around 9 marks. Exponents at around 9 marks. Numeric and geometric patterns at around 9 marks. Functions and relationships at around 5 marks. Algebraic expressions at around 15 marks, which is the topic that has the highest mark allocation. Your algebraic equations at around 9 marks. Your graphs at around 9 marks as well. Coming to the paper 2 assessment framework for grade 9, the duration 1.5 hours, the total mark allocation is at 75 marks. Now we have 4 topics that will be assessed in paper 2. First topic is the geometry of straight lines, allocated at around 16 marks. The geometry of 2D shapes at around 27 marks. Area and perimeter at around 16 marks. Surface area and volume of 3D objects at around 16 marks. Again, notice that the geometry of 2D shapes has been allocated more marks than the other 3 topics. Now, over and above the resources that educators might be using at their respective schools, we have also created a QR code here for the 2023 provincial June tests, the 2022 provincial November examination papers, and the 2023 informal test bank. Now all of these resources, colleagues, can be found when you scan the QR code that's on the slide, and thereafter, colleagues, you'll be able to download all of those material, and then please ensure that you share with your learners as well to ensure that they are adequately prepared before they write the final examination. And lastly, please scan the QR code displayed on the screen that will take you to an electronic attendance register that has to be completed and submitted after viewing this presentation. Now with that, it brings us to the end of our presentation. I want to wish all of our learners the best as they sit down to write their final examinations. Thank you for your attendance.